Welcome to the Heavy Spoilers Show. I'm your host Paul, aka the guy who's getting as many miles out of this movie as I can, and this video we're breaking down Earth 42 from Spider-Man Across the Spiderverse. The movie ends with a big twist, and in it we realise that Miles has actually been taken to an Earth unlike his own, where things are slightly off. It's basically like that episode of Sliders where they think they've finally made it home, but then one of them realises the gate doesn't creak like it used to, so they leave because it's just not the same. Morons, but we'll not get into that, and instead throughout this video we're going to be breaking down what happened on Earth 42 and also all the clues that tease that there was a twist coming. Now this entire thing was actually set up all the way back in the first film, which we pointed out on our Into the Spider-Verse breakdown. We can actually see that Miles' spider sense initially is green and purple before it changes to blue and red. Aaron's colours are actually green and purple, but the fact that Miles changes shows that he's no longer going to be led potentially to a life of crime by his uncle, and he will instead follow in the footsteps of Peter. Hate hearing myself back, but I love how the film builds upon that, as we know the main Miles we follow would have likely become the Prowler had the spider not intervened. That movie is actually filled with a ton of nods to the number 42, and it appears throughout the entire film. This includes Miles' winning lottery ball at the start, which gets him a place at Vision's Academy, the back of the spider, and we see the number 42 on the ground when Miles fails his first jump. His basketball hoodie in this film has 42 on it, and there's these constant ties throughout the entire film. Now in the first movie, there was actually a major clue that the spider was from an alternate universe, as we saw it glitching out just like the other spider peeps did. They show that this Earth wasn't its home, however, it still somewhat carried the destiny that it was always supposed to have. You see, this spider comes from an alternate reality where Miles was supposed to be the sole Spider-Man of that universe. This spider was supposed to be part of that canon, and thus when it arrived on Miles' Earth, it immediately sought him out. And what that does is that it gives that universe two Spider-Men, in both Miles and the Chris Pine version that we meet at the start. However, Earth 42 is now without theirs, and thus it ends up going down a darker path. In this film, we meet loads of different ones from across the multiverse, and basically every reality is supposed to have its own Spider-Man or Spider-Woman. Doesn't matter what the race, gender, or age is, or even species, and we meet several different people who all end up becoming their universe's Spider-Man, whilst the traditional one in Peter Parker never comes to be. This is of course seen in Gwen's world, where she dons the mantle, whereas Peter doesn't. Therefore, on Miles' Earth, the Chris Pine version was meant to be the main one, and Miles would just go on to likely become the Prowler. Now, on Earth 42, they didn't have that Chris Pine version, or, well, any other version, and that's why the alternate Rio has no idea who Spider-Man is. Instead, Miles 42 is going to become this universe's protector, but the intervention of Jonathan On changed absolutely everything. Now, when the Spot narrates his origin story, we actually see that there's a classroom with a spider in it behind a glass case. This is what the Spot pulled across, and this was the one that would have bitten Prowler Miles. We see how close it almost got as well, as in the classroom you can catch Miles 42 with his back turned, and this is made crystal clear due to the character having the braids that we see him wearing later on. Now that spider then bit our Miles, and due to it having DNA from Earth 42, it was forever intrinsically linked with this reality. As for Earth 42, this is a major part of the movie that actually has a lot going on with it in terms of spelling out what's happening on that Earth. Firstly, when Miles crash lands, we can see that the sky is laced with the colour green, which is of course the Prowler's colours. In the main universe, Rio's eyes are brown, whereas here they appear green, and Miles even dons a green and purple coat after picking them up from the floor in the Prowler's room. This is what kinda gave it away for me when I was watching the movie, as they heavily lean into those classic Prowler colours. Now later on in the scene we hear about the Sinister Six cartel, who are clearly running crime in this universe's Manhattan. When Miles first lands, we see a billboard with the number 6 on it, and throughout the landscape there's several other ones that could point out which supervillains are members. Just before Miles arrives at Times Square, we see a big sign with the word Vulture written on it, and when he hits a location there's another name too. Just below the Sony sign we can see the name Electro, and this is advertising 2G phone reception. Which it might be a downgrade, yeah, but at least people aren't running wild with 5G COVID conspiracy theories. And I remember who you did it. I remember seeing those Facebook posts, mate. I seen you posting that. I won't forget 2020. And we also see a sign where Aaron takes Miles to the roof, and we can see a building that looks like it has the word hammer on it. Potentially, this is teasing Hammerhead, and there's also a sign that appears to say Scorpion. There's also a bit where we can catch the name Sandman as well, so that leaves one slot left, which I'm guessing is the Prowler. I do have a feeling that the cartel may appear in the next film, and that they're laying breadcrumbs here for a big villain team-up come the next movie. Now, as for Prowler Miles' universe, I want to first break down exactly what's going on with him, and then go into what's being said by one of the actors. Firstly though, if you're enjoying the video, then please smash that like button like Aaron smashed that punching bag, and make sure you subscribe for a big breakdown and review of The Flash coming really soon. Now we learn that in this universe, Miles' father Jefferson was killed due to a canon event, still playing out exactly the same as how it would have without the Spider's intervention. Whether Miles had powers or not, it wouldn't have changed this, and thus things continued as normal. This is something that we've seen in other Spider-Man stories, and in the PlayStation 4 game, Miles' dad was also killed too. In the Ultimate Universe, it was actually his mother Rio who died, but she was brought back as a gift after the events of Secret Wars when the timeline was restructured. Either way, Miles' dad Jefferson dying has left a big hole in his life. Because of this, Miles has been raised by his mother and uncle Aaron, the latter of which could only help the family through nefarious means. In that first movie when we met Miles, he was hanging out with Aaron a lot, and he's clearly continued on this path and been taken in by his influence. This is what's made him become the Prowler, and it's also what's kept Aaron alive. You see, in that first film, Aaron only died because Miles became Spider-Man. He was tasked by the Kingpin to hunt him down, and this is what eventually got him killed. So Miles not becoming Spider-Man doesn't allow that to happen, and instead we have the death of Jefferson playing out, whereas Aaron doesn't pass away. We see Prowler Miles has become a big name in this crime-ridden universe, and Miles is pulled into it all through a case of mistaken identity. Now, the Prowler in the comics originally started off as a villain, but he eventually became a sort of anti-hero once all the connections to Miles were set up. This is also reflected in the Miles Morales game, in which he kinda helped guide you at some point. Now, why I'm telling you this is because some people have dropped a through time on the scene and have said that Prowler Miles might actually become a good guy. That could be the case, and potentially at the end of Beyond the Spiderverse, we'll see him becoming the protector of Earth 42. After all, it's overrun with criminals, and Prowler Miles may return there after being swayed by our Miles, showing there's a different way. I actually have a theory that Aaron will take the hit for Jefferson and Miles' universe, and that he'll die instead in order to save the brother that he never could. I also suspect that these two are going to meet, and that they'll finally get to say all the things that they wanted to. When you think about it, Jefferson never really got to say goodbye to his brother in that first film, and I'm guessing a similar thing happened here with Aaron. They never got to patch things up, and I think the third film will allow them to say the things they never got to say on their respective Earths. Now, there is also the potential that Prowler Miles may become a nemesis to this one, and this was actually teased up by Shamik Moore during a recent interview.
My arch nemesis would be somebody who was like really type A and really strict with all the rules, and everything had to be done a certain way.
Ooh.
I would just hate that person.
Sounds like you have beef with 2099.
You know, I would say I would have to say the same. That would drive me nuts. I would hate that person too.
My real arch nemesis might be myself in another dimension, with different morals. Someone that is me, but every decision I would make, they make the opposite decision, and they're just as powerful or strong or talented or whatever as me.
Man spoiled the entire thing, but I think it's important to acknowledge at least how he perceives the other Miles. One thing that you might not have noticed as well is that Prowler Miles is actually played by a completely different voice actor. This is done by Gerald Jerome, and it allows him to lean more into his Puerto Rican side due to his dad not being around. Miles here pronounces Morales more like he's speaking Spanish, and I love this little subtle change to differentiate the universes. They still have their similarities though, and Miles is strapped to a punching bag, just like how Peter B was in that first film. Whether he wants to help Miles or not is another thing entirely, but I think that Aaron is likely going to be the key here. As Miles says, there's still good in him, and he too has just learned that his brother's alive in another reality. However, this being set to the backdrop of Heart of the City might show that there ain't no love between them. Now, the Prowler himself is also likely going to be making a big appearance in the MCU very shortly. Donald Glover appears as a live-action version of him in the film, and we actually have some updates on what's happening with this. Now, you might have heard a while back that Sony were developing a Hypno Hustler project that was due to have Donald Glover as the lead producer on it. This would mean that he could potentially be the actor too, however, this has now reportedly been scrapped so that he can play the Prowler in the MCU. Now, though he was pretty low level during the events of Homecoming, we of course know that there's a big 5-year time jump in which anything could have happened. I'd love to learn that Aaron had actually become the Prowler during this time, and it would all just tie things together and make for some really good fan service. Anyway, I won't go into that because I've gone over that Easter egg in depth hundreds and hundreds of times already, but there is a lot of things that if you're a fan and you know how it's played out, that's going to make that incredible. Anyway, there's lots of things to talk about here, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on the film and where you think that they're going to take things with Prowler Miles. If you want to support the channel for as little as 99 cents a month, then please click the join button below, and as a thank you, you'll get early access to videos every week. Last week we dropped the Terminator video early, why the scene in Spider-Man Across the Spiderverse is perfect early, and the podcast episode as well, and I'm just trying to give members that extra content to thank them for all their support basically. Really means a lot, and if you want to buy some merch as well, we also have a store over at zeroedition.com which sells lots of nerdy inspired merch. We've just launched a Secret Invasion / Pulp Fiction inspired t-shirt as well, so if you want to head over there and help us out, then the link's in the description. Now if you want something else to watch, then definitely check out our video going over why all the multiverses across the Marvel Universe are in fact dying. There's lots of clues there that this is leading to a big thing playing out, and yeah, I'll not spoil it, but yeah, if you want to learn more, go over there after this. By the way, huge thank you for clicking the video. I've been Paul, you've been the best, and I'll see you next time. Take care, peace.